What's the wordy, big birdie? Alright, so we back with the homie Nick. We have arrived finally at the Real Rambo, Roy Benavidez. I think I pronounced that right. Now, I told myself, and I told a few of you guys, which I lied to y'all, I said I was going to do Old Treachery first, but y'all been on my ass about this one heavy, and I seen him pop up a few times in the comment section the past couple of days, so I said, let me just do this one. You know what I mean? I see it's a long one. It's 45 minutes, so I'm going to try to keep my blabbering to a minimum, but y'all know I can't help myself. Now, yesterday, I told you guys that I was going to do just shorts. I did two of Nick early TikToks, and then I did two ERBs because I wasn't going to have time to do a long form, but a client let me know that he didn't need his custom piece until Friday, so I said, okay, let me go ahead and knock out a long form today, and then I'll start on his piece after I get done with this. So I lied to y'all again. I was supposed to drop the TikTok shorts before I drop this one, but I think I'm going to drop this first and then drop the TikTok shorts later on today after it. So let's get into this. The Real Rambo, Roy Benavidez, the Green Beret that took on an army with just a knife. Again, a title that you can react to. You could just react to the title for a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and get this thing started. I ain't going to hold y'all up too long. Let rock.
John Rambo, the action hero that was an unstoppable, unkillable Green Beret from the Vietnam War that went into battle with nothing more than a big knife.
Wait, I did not know. Wait, it's crazy. As much as I watched Rambo, I did not know his name was John. Maybe I was just too young when the movie came out.
John Rambo, the action hero that was an unstoppable, unkillable Green Beret from the Vietnam War that went into battle with nothing more than a big knife. This video is not about him. It's also not about the man that inspired that character. That was Audie Murphy. This video is about the real Rambo, the actual man that was inspired to join the military because of Audie Murphy, that would go on to become a Green Beret and go into combat against 1,000 men with nothing more than a big knife. Today we're talking about call sign Tango Mike, aka that mean Mexican Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez.
Yo, my boy Husky, my boy look like he related to my family. And is that a necklace? Is that a medal on a necklace? Or is that, I think that is.
This video is brought to you by Delete Me.
I thought you'd never ask.
2 this week, huh?
Which one was I supposed to use?
I mean, either was fine, but both works, I guess.
Still on the couch?
Yeah, of course. Love you. It's a rough life. Anyways, Delete Me. Super simple, straightforward business. You give them money, they make sure that your personal information is not being sold on the internet by data brokers. Okay, and here's the thing with this. When I first started, I didn't want to give Delete Me my personal information because the whole purpose is I wanted my personal information.
Ain't nobody robbing Nick, bro. His wife firing at y'all, he firing at y'all. I'm damn sure his children probably firing at y'all as two of you step foot in that house.
Information off the internet and giving my personal information to a company on the internet just kind of seemed counterproductive. But with Delete Me, you don't really have to give them that much information. When you sign up, you can give them as little information as you want. All they need is like your name and an email address, and that's it. And they will go through the internet and find everything for sale that's associated with that name and that email. They're going to come to you and be like, have you ever been associated with this address? Or are you related to this person? Or is this your old email? Or is this your phone number? And anytime you tell them, yes, that's me, they're going to go ahead and get all that information taken down so it's no longer for sale. Honestly, it's alarming how much of your personal information is on the internet and people are apparently making money selling it. Nothing makes you want Delete Me more than having Delete Me and seeing all the shit they find. And once that initial wave of information is taken down, they're going to keep monitoring all of these data brokers, and anytime there is a new listing available with any of your information, they're going to make sure it gets taken down as soon as possible. So if you want to check them out, I'll have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video.
Let's rock. Let's rock.
Born on August 5th, 1935, Roy's first memory in life was attending his own father's funeral after he had passed away from tuberculosis when Roy was 3 years old.
Dang.
1 year later, Roy's mother would remarry, and 9 months after that, she would give birth to Roy's new half-sister. And from that moment on, Roy was essentially on his own. His parents gave all of their attention to their new daughter, and Roy and his younger brother Rogelio were kind of neglected. 2 years later, Roy's mother would...
Rogelio. I know he's Mexican, but it's some Panamanians I know named Rogelio.
And Roy and his younger brother Rogelio were kind of neglected. 2 years later, Roy's mother would develop a cough that would get progressively worse and worse, similar to how Roy's father had. Roy's mother now had tuberculosis too. And while she was on her deathbed, her husband, Roy's stepfather, would inform her that he would absolutely not be raising another man's kids. And 6-year-old Roy overhears this. He's terrified. He has no idea what's going to happen to him and his younger brother Rogelio. He's already lost his dad, he's about to lose his mom, and his stepdad doesn't want him, and that's the only family he's ever known in his entire life. On the day of his mother's funeral, his stepfather tells him and Rogelio to pack their things. They're going to go live somewhere else. They load up in the car, go off to where the funeral's held, and at the funeral, a man comes up and introduces himself as Nicholas Benavidez. He is their father's brother, Roy and Rogelio's uncle, and they're going to come live with him. After the funeral, they load up in Uncle Nicholas's car and they head off to El Campo, Texas, Roy and Rogelio's new home. Upon their arrival, they get to meet what is going to be their new immediate family. They have their Uncle Nicholas, their Aunt Alexandria, their grandfather Salvador, and their 8 cousins. Roy is then informed that it is now going to be
Good bulky family to come home to. Good bulky family. That's growing up. Let me tell you something, man. Growing up with cousins in a Latin household, it's something to experience, man. Your cousins, like, we hold cousins real near and dear to us. We treat them like brothers and sisters, especially if you actually come up with them. For Panamanians, we all typically, like, anywhere my grandmother moved, any apartment she moved to, we moved to. We kind of like all the Panamanians here who populated in the same area. We all lived in the same apartments or neighboring apartments. So I grew up with all my cousins, like every day, bus stop, on the bus, same everything. So I like that.
7 boys sharing 4 beds, and
Very
that everyone
familiar.
in this family has to work to make this entire thing work because they don't have a lot of money. All the kids in the family are expected to go to school, get good grades, and then after school, they all have a job that they are expected to go out and do to help contribute to the family. And at the age of 7, Roy's first job was to go shine shoes to earn a little bit of extra money. Then in the summers or any other time the opportunity presented itself, they would all go out as a family and work in the fields picking crops. And this goes on for Roy's entire childhood, and his new family is incredible. His aunt, his uncle, his grandfather Salvador, they're the best people on the planet, but they're also being spread across their work and the 9 other kids in the house, so no kid gets a whole lot of attention. So between that, losing both of his parents, and being abandoned by his stepfather, he's kind of an angry kid, understandably so. So at a young age, he developed a pretty bad attitude, and he was not afraid to fight about it. One of his favorite things to do when he was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old was to go to the movie theater and watch the newsreels of all the different things that were happening in World War II, and he was inspired by the paratroopers. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to be in the United States Army. But the problem with this pastime of going to the movie theater to watch all the newsreels was that you had to pay to get inside, and Roy didn't have any money. All his shoe shining money went back to the family. So Roy and a bunch of other kids would wait outside the movie theater for one of the previous showings to leave, and hopefully rich people would throw their pocket change out and let all the poor kids scramble and fight over it. It didn't.
Is that how that went? You would throw your pocket change away? That's a new one. I ain't heard that one. I knew they used to go to the movies, watch the news and all that. I didn't know rich folks were just throwing away pocket change.
It didn't take young Roy long to figure out that if he just beat up let all the poor kids scramble and fight over it. It didn't take young Roy long to figure out that if he just beat up all the other kids, he would get all the money and then he wouldn't have to run and dive for pocket change.
The enemy cannot push a button
I
if
know
you
this movie
disable
too.
his hand.
And that's just the beginning.
I'm having movie brain farts, y'all. It's early. T just killed me at the gym. Gosh, he killed me. So I'm having brain farts.
Of the fighting. It gets
Cannot push a button if you disable his hand.
And that's just the beginning of the fighting. It gets so much worse because as World War II progresses and all the young men go off to fight this war, there's a huge lack of manpower all across the United States. And to help alleviate that, one of the things the United States government does is basically opens up the southern border so that people can freely come into the United States and begin working. Because of that, there ends up being this huge misconception, especially in any state bordering Mexico, that any person of Hispanic descent wasn't even American, they were just some Mexican that was showing up to work in the fields.
Y el acento, ¿dónde are you from?
Scranton. Y before that, La Philadelphia.
This leads to young Roy getting picked on at school. All the kids are calling him a dumb Mexican. They're telling him he's not American. They're calling him a pepper belly. And he's like 8, 9 years old. He has no idea what's going on. So he goes to his grandfather, Salvador. And Grandpa explains to him, Roy, the Benavidez family fought against Mexico to gain their independence, just like any white person's ancestors fought against Great Britain to get their independence. Your mother was Yaqui Native American. You are just as much, if not more American than anybody else. The Benavidez family name is Mexican, but we are Americans. You have multiple cousins fighting for America in the war right now. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you're not American, which is a great sentiment. I love it. However, what young, angry Roy honed in on was they fought for it. From this point forward, anybody that wants to make fun of Roy has a fight on their hands, and they almost never won, because Roy, at the age of 9, 10 years old, has been working in fields and shining shoes after school every day for years. He is way above the average level of toughness for a young man. And Roy wasn't even that big of a kid. If anything, he was smaller than average, but none of the bullies were bigger than him either once they were looking up at him from the flat of their back, which is always where they happen to find themselves eventually. Now, it's also important to mention that Roy, while he does have
I want to say this. I grew up with a lot of cousins and we fought a lot. Not my cousins. I'm talking about like in school and shit, because it was quite a few of us who you knew not to fuck with. I feel like Roy felt like he could do this because he had 8 cousins right there with him, ready to brawl with him. And I don't know if Nick is leaving that out or if that's even a part of the story, but I feel like, because that's how we was, bro. It was like, boy, we'll beat your ass. Like, all of us will beat your ass. Cause yeah, Nolo got a bunch of cousins that go here, and we all on your head after we get off the bus. So I feel like Roy had that battery in his back because he had his family to have his back. You feel me?
He was smaller than average, but none of the bullies were bigger than him either once they were looking up at him from the flat of their back, which is always where they happen to find themselves eventually. Now, it's also important to mention that Roy, while he does have a temper and he's not afraid to fight about it, he does have standards. He was being raised right by his aunt and his uncle and his grandfather. Roy would not hit a girl if a girl made fun of him.
He's a good kid.
But what he would do is when they went out to recess, he would kick dirt at her until her brother or her boyfriend came to stop him, and then he'd beat the shit out of that guy.
Hello, how are you?
And this goes on for Roy's entire childhood.
Wait, I gotta take that. Bro, Nick, how did you know to use that scene from Step Brothers, bro? How?
He would kick dirt at her until her brother or her boyfriend came to stop him, and then he'd beat the shit out of that guy.
Hello, how are you?
And this goes on for Roy's entire childhood. He's always getting in fights. He struggles in the classroom academically, but outside of school, he does work super hard to help provide for his family. He still loves going to the movie theater, watching all the newsreels about World War II. He still wants to grow up to be a paratrooper, and he also loves hanging out with his uncle and his grandfather, Salvador. And his grandpa had all these amazing stories that he would share with him, and all these stories had some underlying meaning or some lesson that Roy needed to be taught. And his favorite story was when his grandpa was younger and he was a cowboy, and he was on this trail, and another cowboy had fallen off his horse down onto a cliff face and he was stuck. And Grandpa Salvador stopped, took his belt off, and lowered it down to help pull this cowboy up and saved his life. And the moral of that story was, when somebody needs help, you help him. And all this keeps going on until he's about 14 years old and he drops out of school. He's not going to go to high school. He's just going to go get a full-time job and help support his family. So that's what he does. He goes out and he starts working at this local tire shop. Uncle Nicholas, realizing that Roy is going to be a man soon and that getting in fights like he does is going to have real-world repercussions, figures that he needs to help Roy get over that somehow. So he encourages Roy to start amateur boxing, and Roy is incredible at it. He makes it all the way to the state tournament his first year of doing it.
All right, wait. Let me catch up. All right, just so I'm following right. Boom, born, boom, dad passes, boom, mom gets married a year later after dad passes. I think he's 6. Mom gets sick. At this time, mom gets sick. He overhears Step Pop saying, I don't want you. I'm not raising another man's kid. Boom, they go to mother's funeral. Uncle steps in and say, don't worry, bro, I got you. I'm going to take you in. He takes him in. They move to Texas. Big family, 8 cousins, I believe. 8 cousins. Roy got the battery in his back. He's an angry kid because of his past. His grades are suffering. He's getting in fights. He goes to the movies. He's watching the news. He wants to be a paratrooper. This is 9 years old. He's getting in all of these fights. 14, his grades are suffering. 14 years old, he drops out. He drops out of school. He's still getting in fights. His uncle says, I gotta get a hold on this kid. Fuck it. If you fighting, I'm gonna let you fight, but you're gonna fight professionally. And he becomes a boxer at the age of 14. Shit. I think that's where we at right now.
Roy is incredible at it. He makes it all the way to the state tournament his first year of doing it. While there, he ends up losing his very first match, and in the locker room after his fight, the young man that had just beat him comes up and wants to shake his hand now that they have their gloves off, and Roy's anger and temper gets the better of him, and he ends up fighting this kid in the locker room, wrestling him into a stall and shoving his head into a toilet.
Oh.
After Roy does that, all the other coaches, all the other fighters, Roy's coach, all look at him like, what the fuck, dude? And they're all disappointed. And it was the first time in Roy's life that he felt ashamed and disappointed in himself. And this is where Roy really starts to get a lid and a grasp on how to control his anger. After that, Roy gives up amateur boxing and just continues working full-time at the tire shop. And that's when his boss, Mr. Haddock, the tire shop owner, also kind of becomes his father figure too, because he works with him and he's around him so much. He just becomes that older male role model that Roy has always kind of been looking for. And he continues to help Roy mature and get a better grip on his anger and more control of himself. And this goes on for a couple of years. And then one day when Roy is 17 years old, a recruiter from the Texas National Guard comes in and wants to hang up a flyer at the tire shop for anybody who's interested in joining the Texas National Guard. And on that flyer was none other than Roy's role model, Audie Murphy, the most decorated soldier of World War II. You see, this is right in the middle of the Korean War, so Audie Murphy, the World War II war hero, had joined the Texas National Guard to help with recruiting, and he was also going to train the next generation of soldiers. And at this point, Audie Murphy's the shit. He's got an award-winning book, he's an actor, and when he's acting, he's playing the role of himself in movies, and he's being told by directors, hey, I know you were there and you're literally just portraying the shit you did, but you need to tamp it down a little bit because it's so unrealistic, nobody's going to believe this story. This is a Texan that was...
You fucking lying to me. Is this him? Bruh. These dudes get smaller and smaller as these stories go on. That's him? And you telling me to direct? Y'all said it, and y'all always say it. The reality is crazier than fiction. They had to calm down. He's playing himself in the movie. Himself. And the director's like, bro, you can't be yourself that much. Because nobody's going to believe this shit, bro. That's crazy.
A little bit because it's so unrealistic, nobody's going to believe this story. This is a Texan that was rejected by the Marine Corps for being too small and then went on to be the most decorated soldier of World War II, earning the Medal of Honor for going toe-to-toe with an entire German SS battalion by himself from the back of a flaming M10 tank destroyer with a 50 caliber machine gun. So Roy Benavidez figures if the Texas National Guard is good enough for Audie Murphy, then that's exactly where he wants to be. So he joins the Texas National Guard, he ships off, goes to basic training, ends up coming back. He's doing his weekends, he's doing his training in the summer. That goes on for a couple of years while he's still working at the tire shop with Mr. Haddock. Then one day he decides that he likes doing army.
Now, that's because National Guard, you're not actually deployed, you're not actually, I forget what the term is. I forget, but you're not in action. I'm gonna just say that. Y'all, I'm sure y'all gonna correct me. So you're actually at home and you just go train on the weekends, I believe. Is that how the National Guard works? Let me know. All right, so just so we know, boom, he boxes, he beats up the opponent because he lost. I'm just trying to make sure I'm following up to where the action starts, even though a lot of action has already happened. He beat him up. He goes work at the tire shop, which reminds me of me and Mr. Armstrong. He owned the shop. I was 14. You know, my dad wasn't the greatest father figure. Mr. Armstrong I learned a lot from Mr. Armstrong, helping him at the body shop. Anyway, so he helps the guy at the body shop. He becomes a father figure. He's helping him control his temper. My boy walk in to hang up some flyers with his his role model on it. So now he want to join the National Guard, and he joins the National Guard. Bet. And he's still working at the shop though.
Up coming back, he's doing his weekends, he's doing his training in the summer. That goes on for a couple of years while he's still working at the tire shop with Mr. Haddock. Then one day he decides that he likes doing army stuff a lot more than he likes changing tires, so he wants to go full-time army. He goes over to the active duty recruiter's office. It's a shared office. They've got the Navy, the Marines, the Army, and the Air Force all right there in one building. Roy walks right past the Navy, walks right past the Marines, walks right past the Air Force, goes straight to the active duty Army recruiter, says, here's my guard papers. I'm a corporal. I want to be a paratrooper. I don't just want a normal contract. I want a contract that guarantees me airborne school. At this point, the Army recruiter looks at Roy, who's like 130 pounds soaking wet, and he's like, man, you're not big enough to be a paratrooper. At which point, I'm paraphrasing here, but Roy says something along the lines of, well, I could cut you down to my size and we'll see if you're good enough to be a paratrooper. Maybe that'll help you make your decision. At which point, the Marine recruiter overhears that and he comes walking over and is like, son, you should be a Marine. You've got the right attitude. I don't care how big you are. You should come be a devil dog with me. At which point Roy's like, no, I don't want to be a Marine. I want to be in the Army just like Audie Murphy was, which brings everything full circle because Audie Murphy was rejected from the Marines for being too small. And now Roy Benavidez is rejecting the Marines because he wants to be like Audie Murphy. Then the other Army recruiter who's a captain.
That's crack. That's so hard, y'all. That's hard. I like how Nick put the two stories together, but they don't really know each other. But I like that, y'all, because I'm a small fella. And people think I can't do a lot of shit, but I've done a lot of shit in my life. So I'm feeling this part of the story. Heavy.
Circle because Audie Murphy was rejected from the Marines for being too small. And now Roy Benavidez is rejecting the Marines because he wants to be like Audie Murphy. Then the other Army recruiter who's a captain, an officer, somebody that outranks the sergeant that thinks Roy's too small comes in and he's like, no, we'll take him. Come with me. So they go.
Now I wonder if that was because of the Marines. Because the Marines wanted him, it made the Army say, no, motherfucker. Y'all not getting... Nope, he coming with us just because y'all want him. I'm going to jump out and I'm going to hang on the limb and say that's exactly why the Army took him. Because they saw that the Marines had interest in him. Tell me I'm lying. Tell me I'm lying. I know y'all ain't going to say I'm lying.
Sergeant that thinks Roy's too small comes in and he's like, no, we'll take him. Come with me. So they go, they start doing the paperwork and Roy's like, okay, I'm a corporal in the National Guard. I've already been through basic training. I've already done through job training. You should just be able to send me straight to airborne school and then give me a duty station. And the recruiter's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Roy signs on the dotted line. He packs his shit. He gets on the bus and he's off to the Army. And Roy then immediately finds out the hard way that recruiter was either not listening to him at all or he was lying to him because they sent Roy straight to basic training. Again. And to add insult to injury, he is also not awarded an airborne slot after that, so he's not going to be a paratrooper like he always wanted to. After he gets done with training, he immediately gets sent over to...
Okay, that does make me believe that they just took him because the Marines wanted him. I'm a stamp that. I'm a stamp that notion. I'm a stamp that.
He's not going to be a paratrooper like he always wanted to. After he gets done with training, he immediately gets sent over to Korea, where he is going to be there right after the Korean War ended, and he's going to be manning the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, between what is now North and South Korea. He's in Korea for a year, then he comes back home for a little bit stateside, then they ship him out to Germany, and while he's there, he learns how to speak German, and in Roy's own words, he becomes the first Hispanic American that could speak German with a Southern accent.
Correcto.
He gets done in Germany, he comes back home, he goes to military police school, becomes an MP, and he gets assigned to basically being a glorified chauffeur for high-ranking military officers, generals, colonels, etc. And then randomly, one day, a couple months out from his contract being up with the Army, he's trying to decide whether or not he wants to re-enlist, and this General Westmoreland, asks him, you ever thought about being a paratrooper? And Roy's like, yeah, actually, that's the only reason I'm here. I wanted to do that. I kind of got screwed out of it. I'm thinking about re-enlisting.
Wait, so he's went 4 years in the military and it's about to end and he's trying to figure if he wants to enlist, and now they're saying, hey, you want to be a paratrooper? So he's 17. I think he enrolled at 17, or was it 19? So at this point he's between 22 and 23 years old, if I got my math right.
General Westmoreland asked him, you ever thought about being a paratrooper? And Roy's like, yeah, actually, that's the only reason I'm here. I wanted to do that. I kind of got screwed out of it. I'm thinking about re-enlisting, and if I re-enlist, I really want to be able to become a paratrooper. To which the general kind of like doesn't even really continue the conversation. He's just like, huh, well, that's neat. Anyways, we're at the airport now. I got to go. Bye. And then Roy never sees this guy ever again. A couple months later, Roy's contract is about to be up. He has to decide if he's going to re-enlist or if he's going to get out. And his potential re-enlistment contract, there's an airborne packet courtesy of General Westmoreland. If he decides to re-enlist, he will get to go to airborne school and he will get to become a paratrooper.
Oh, wow.
So that's what he does. He goes to airborne school, gets his jump wings, becomes a full-fledged paratrooper, and then he gets stationed with the legendary 82nd Airborne Division out of Fort Bragg. I mean, Fort Liberty, sorry. Okay, sidebar. Look, I don't care if we're going to be renaming stuff every once in a while. That's completely fine. However, name it after a war hero or something. Don't just pick a generic term like Liberty, okay? I don't need Fort Liberty. I don't need Fort Life. I don't need Fort Pursuit of Happiness, okay? Quit doing generic shit and name it after an actual badass war hero. Anyways, Roy's at Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty, North Carolina. He is with...
I'm with that. It just sounds like, what y'all call them? Paper pushers? It sounds like paper pushers. Who's like, shit, I'm not out there doing cool shit, so I'm not about to let all that cool shit they do come in and take over my job. I'm gonna name this shit what I want to name it. Fuck them. Is that what that is? Is that what's going on? The paper pushers are renaming the things and don't want to give the glory to the heroes? I don't know. That's what it sounds like to me.
I don't need Fort Life. I don't need Fort Pursuit of Happiness, okay? Quit doing generic shit and name it after an actual badass war hero. Anyways, Roy's at Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty, North Carolina. He is with the 82nd Airborne. During this time, he's training, he's working, he's doing his thing. He also ends up meeting his wife, and he goes about this the old school way. He has to have chaperone meetings with her until he earns enough street cred to finally be able to sit on the front porch of her parents' house with her. Her name is Lala. They get married, she ends up getting pregnant, things are going exactly how they're supposed to go. And then in 1965, Roy gets deployed to Vietnam at the age of 30. Roy gets sent over there as an advisor. He's going to be training the South Vietnamese in how to fight back against the North Vietnamese and hopefully prevent the spread of communism. That's the plan. So he starts training these guys, he's working with them, and it gets to the point that he has to end up going out on some of these missions with them because they need a leader. They need somebody with more experience to go out and show them how it's done. And he does that multiple times. And then one day he's walking through the jungle and all of a sudden, Roy has no idea what's going on. 1 second, he's in South Vietnam on a mission. The next second, he's in a hospital in the Philippines, and everything goes by in a blur. And before he knows it, he's in San Antonio at the Fort Sam Houston Medical Center. At this point, Roy still has no idea what's going on. Doctors and nurses are coming and going. There's some pregnant woman named Lala that's trying to hang out with him all day long, and he's just not comprehending anything that's happening to him. Roy's wife, Lala, would be informed that Roy had stepped on a landmine in South Vietnam during one of their patrols, and they don't know how he survived, but the going theory was that it was some type of defect with the landmine, that when it exploded, the entire landmine didn't fragment, but the top of it stayed intact as one solid metal plate, and when he stepped on it, it detonated it, and the landmine plate shot up and smacked him on the ass so hard that it broke his back and jolted his brain so severely that they don't think he'll ever regain his memory. In addition to that, due to his broken back, he would almost certainly never be able to walk again, even if he did come to mentally. And this goes on for weeks of Lala showing him pictures, telling him stories, trying to remind him of who he was. And then one day, he just wakes up. He snaps out of it. He's sitting in a rehab room at the hospital by himself at a table, and in front of him, there's like the child's toy, you know, the big rectangle with like the cylinders and the squares and the triangles, and you shove each one through the corresponding shape. He's sitting there with that in front of him, and the PT person is like, "Can you put the shapes through there, Roy?" And he's like, "Yeah, obviously I could put the shapes through there." And they're like, "Well, why don't you go ahead and do it?" He's like, "What, am I applying to get into the Marine Corps? Like, what is happening right now? Why do you think I can't do that?" And they're like, "Well, just go ahead and do it." So he does it, and he's like, "Okay. Obviously, what is happening right now?" They then explain to him that he has been unable to do that for weeks every single time they've got him to try, and Roy is just like literally snapped out of it like that. He's 100% mentally all there. He just doesn't remember the accident itself. He remembers everything else. So Roy's back. This is great. Now he just wants to get back.
Wait a fucking minute, Nick. Slow the fuck down. Steps on landmine. Landmine doesn't fully detonate. The metal plate hits his ass so hard. It breaks his back. Somehow fucks with his brain. He goes to the hospital, can't remember shit for weeks. His wife is trying to bring him up to speed. And then just one day he wakes up and remembers everything except the incident. Puts the shapes in the shit and is like, "What the fuck y'all on? Y'all trying to treat me like I'm stupid." So you telling me at the age of 30, before he's seen any real action, this happens to him. And the story's not finished. We have more of the story. All right, bro. Fuck it. Let's go.
Accident itself, he remembers
Let's go.
everything else. So Roy's back. This is great. Now he just wants to get back up on his feet. He wants to keep serving in the army. He wants to keep jumping out of planes. He wants to go back to Vietnam and be with his guys. And that's just how Roy is. So he demands that they start giving him physical therapy as soon as possible. And that's what he does. And over the course of a couple weeks, he comes to the painful realization that these physical therapists aren't getting him ready to walk and run and be in the army again. They're getting him mentally ready to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. The doctors are telling him he's never going to walk again. He's going to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair, and he needs to accept that. But Roy's not buying it. If they're not going to push him to get the results that he wants, he's going to push himself. The night nurses come in, they catch him, they give him a pill, they knock him out, they put him to sleep. He wakes up the next morning, his hip hurts from where he fell out of bed, and his leg muscles are sore from bearing weight for the first time in months. But the plus side, his hip hurts and his legs are sore.
Right.
So obviously, they're going to work if he just keeps building them up stronger and stronger. So that's what he does every night. He rolls out of bed, he drags himself across the floor, lifts himself up, and puts as much weight on his legs as he possibly can. Sometimes the nurses catch him and try to put him back to sleep. The nurses are getting pissed off at him because he keeps doing this, but his legs keep getting stronger and stronger, and he's able to make it over to the nightstand faster and faster. And it gets to the point where all the other guys in this medical bay realize what he's doing, and they start cheering him on at night. Nobody's ratting him out. They're trying to distract the nurses to get Roy the time that he needs to be able to do his version of physical therapy. And this goes on for months. During the day, they're getting him ready for his life in a wheelchair. He's begging them just more time for more PT, and he'll be able to walk again. They're not buying it. They're doing the paperwork in the background to get him med boarded out of the U.S. Army. They know that he's done. But Roy never gives up on himself, and he keeps training every single night. Then, after having been in the hospital for 5 months, the doctor walks in with Roy's discharge papers. Roy begs and he pleads not to discharge him out of the army, and the doctor finally says, Roy, even if we continue doing PT, at best, maybe you'll be able to stand up one day. You're never going to be able to walk again. At that point, Roy hops up out of the bed, stands directly in front of the doctor, and takes one step towards him. And it was one of the most excruciating pains that he's ever felt in his entire life. He's got tears in his eyes, but he's looking this doctor right in his face. And the doctor, shocked that Roy hopped out of bed and took a step towards him, says, Benavidez, if you can walk out of this room, I'll tear these papers up. So Roy walked out of that room.
Oh, man! Hold on now.
Okay, now that's Ricky Bobby. Don't you put that on me, Ricky Bobby. Hey, my boy Roy said, don't you put that on me, doctor. Don't you put that on me.
Oh, man! Hold on now. Hold on. Oh, that hurt. Walk it off. Hey, man, you can walk.
Shortly after that, he walked out of that hospital and went back to Fort Bragg.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Obviously, he gets assigned a desk job, but despite that, Roy's going to do the best job he can no matter what tasks they give him. So he crushes that job the best he can, and when he goes home at night, he continues to train. First, he starts walking a couple miles a day. Then he's walking 5 miles a day. Then he's running 5 miles a day.
Oh my
then
God.
he's running 10 miles a day and doing 500 push-ups in a single day, every day. And he works himself up to being just as fast, just as strong as he ever was. And then, since he did such a good job at that desk job, he kind of figured out how things worked. And then wouldn't you know it, one day, out of the blue, Roy Benavidez's name ended up on a manifest to do one of the jumps for the 82nd Airborne's training. Not just one manifest, but 3. Roy did 3 jumps in a single day after having broken his back.
What are the odds of that?
What are the odds of that?
And after having
Fuck, what movie is that? That Bruce Almighty? I'm wrong. I just be throwing out names, y'all. But y'all got my back on that.
broken his back.
What are the odds of that?
What are the odds of that?
And after having done that, Roy sits back, relaxes, reflects on his achievement. No, I'm just kidding. He goes out and decides that he wants to become a Green Beret now. So he goes off to Special Forces selection and he makes it. He passes. He becomes a Green Beret. On one hand, absolutely incredible. It is almost unbelievable that he's able to accomplish this. On the other hand, it's obvious that he was going to be able to accomplish this, right? Because if you don't know about these Special Forces groups, it's never like the fastest, the strongest, the freak athlete that ends up making these Special Forces units. It's always just that tough farm kid that you're going to have to kill to get him to stop. It's that person that's never going to quit. And if there was ever a embodiment of that archetype of person, it's Roy Benavidez, okay? Homie stepped on a landmine and literally walked it off. Of course he had what it took to become a Green Beret. That's just to get selected to be in the unit though, so then he has to go off and get all of his other training.
Now, I don't know exactly what a Green Beret does. I just know there's movies on them, and I know they do special ops. I don't know exactly what it all entails, so y'all let me know.
It took to become a Green Beret. That's just to get selected to be in the unit though, so then he has to go off and get all of his other training. He becomes a linguist, he gets cross-trained as a medic, he gets trained on every heavy weapon system, he becomes trained in military intelligence, the gathering of information. So he gets done with all this training, then he gets orders that he is going to be deploying to Central America. Here's the problem, Roy doesn't want to deploy to Central America, Roy wants to go back to Vietnam. So Roy goes back to that very same office that he worked in for a little while he was training before he became a Green Beret, and wouldn't you know it, somehow or another his orders got changed and he was sent to Vietnam instead.
For me.
But Roy wasn't just going to be going to Vietnam, he was going to be going to other countries neighboring Vietnam, like Cambodia. Roy was part of Mac v SOG. Okay, real quick, for those that don't know, Mac v SOG at this point in time is America's premier top secret special forces group, okay? They take all the best guys from all the other special forces, the Army Rangers, the Marine Raiders, the Green Berets, the Navy SEALs. They take their best guys and they put them in this unit together as like America's special forces dream team. Basically,
wait, so this is where I think I asked y'all before. So is there ever a moment where all the branches come together and that's that crest he put up, this is where they meet, this is where they collide and they mesh and become one? Oh, this is filthy. This is filthy work. This is a lethal group.
Other special forces, the Army Rangers, the Marine Raiders, the Green Berets, the Navy SEALs. They take their best guys and they put them in this unit together as like America's special forces dream team. Basically, they're the ones doing all the stuff that America's not doing. You know? This group is so secretive that nobody even knew that these guys existed until like 30 years after Vietnam. Okay, SOG, everybody thinks it stands for Special Operations Group. That's not what it stands for. It stands for Studies and Observations Group. And they did that on purpose because they wanted it to sound like some nerd shit. That way, if a politician or a high-ranking officer that wasn't supposed to be in the know read that on a document, they weren't going to ask any questions. During Vietnam, these guys had a 150 to...
So are you telling me that the military was conniving to the military? Like the military was being sneaky to the government? Is that what I'm hearing? Like somebody said, hey, I got a fucking deal. If we take these badass motherfuckers from here, from the Marines, take these badass motherfuckers from the Army, these bad boys from the Navy, these motherfuckers from the Green Beret, we put them together, we gonna have us a super group. We got MJ in them. MJ, Magic, Bird, we got them all. But the big dogs, the paper pushers, not gonna allow that. So we got to lie about this shit. It sounds about American to me.
It stands for Studies and Observations Group. And they did that on purpose because they wanted it to sound like some nerd shit. That way, if a politician or a high-ranking officer that wasn't supposed to be in the know read that on a document, they weren't going to ask any questions. During Vietnam, these guys had a 150 to 1 kill-death ratio. For every Mac v SOG member that went down, 150 enemies went down first. And they do all kinds of different crazy stuff during Vietnam, but when Roy gets linked up with them, they're working in Cambodia. Okay, real brief, oversimplified version of what's going on here. You have the NVA, the North Vietnamese Army, and they are trying to supply the Viet Cong, the guerrilla fighters in South Vietnam, with a bunch of supplies. Now,
okay, before he goes in, remember I told y'all the story about Spitmaster, the one who spit out his nose, his eyeballs, and his ears. I don't care what y'all say, we fucking saw it. Okay, he was from Cambodia, so I already have this idea of Cambodians being some magical tough bastards. Okay. So I'm anxious to see what he says about Cambodia, because I don't know shit about Cambodia except Spitmaster.
They are trying to supply the Viet Cong, the guerrilla fighters in South Vietnam, with a bunch of supplies. Now, they have two options. They can punch through the front line, fight through all the American defenses to deliver these supplies. Doesn't sound like a very good time. Or they could cheat. They could just cut right over into Laos and then travel through this neutral territory with no resistance, and then travel into Cambodia, more neutral territory with no resistance, penetrate way past all the American front lines, deep into South Vietnam, and then cut back in and drop off all the supplies. Okay, and to be fair, that's a brilliant plan because there's not a whole lot America can do to stop it, right? Because the only thing America really can do is to send their troops into Cambodia and Laos, and that's not going to be a very popular idea considering that most of America's mad that they're in Vietnam in the first place. They're definitely not going to support invading 2 more countries. So if America wants to stop this, the only thing they can do is to send their own guys into this neutral territory where they're not supposed to be to cut off this supply line. And then, even if they do run into each other in this neutral territory, it just turns into the Spider-Man meme, right? Hey, you're not supposed to be here. No, you're not supposed to be here. And then everybody's just as guilty of breaking the same rules. It's a really good plan on their part. Okay, but here's the problem with this whole thing. America cares a lot more about not getting caught in these neutral territories than the North Vietnamese do. Because of this, the Americans are only sending in very, very small groups of men, like 12 guys or less, whereas the North Vietnamese are sending in entire companies. They're sending in hundreds of guys. So this makes it impossible for the Americans to directly confront the North Vietnamese. So rather than confronting them, they start stalking them. They start tracking them down and following them, writing down what their most commonly used paths are, what they're dropping off, where they're dropping it off. They try to memorize all their different routes. They try to figure out anything and everything they can about their operations inside of Laos and Cambodia. So that goes on for a while, and then somebody gets the bright idea of like, hey, we know where all the enemy's ammunition is. What if we just snuck in a bunch of defective ammunition that blew up when they tried to fire it, and then it would not only A, take care of some of the enemy troops that got messed up from, you know, a howitzer round blowing up or ammunition blowing up or defective ammo and they go and try to get into a firefight, then the Americans are guaranteed to win. There's that aspect, but then there's also the psychological aspect of the enemy isn't going to trust their own supply line anymore. So then that goes on for a little while, and then eventually the North Vietnamese...
That goes on a little while as in that shit actually happened? Like they actually... Wait a minute. Wait the fuck a minute. They actually snuck in behind enemy lines, quiet as a house mouse, whatever the fuck the saying goes, and swapped out ammo with defective ammo so that it'll blow up on them. And in turn, the Vietnamese believe that it's something wrong with their shit. So we can't trust this ammo, so we can't fire it like that. And he said that just went on for a while. This is some psyop shit. This is some psychological warfare shit. I'm here for it though.
Guaranteed to win. There's that aspect, but then there's also the psychological aspect of the enemy isn't going to trust their own supply line anymore. So then that goes on for a little while, and then eventually the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong figure out that the Americans are doing this, so they start sending out their best guys, their equivalent of MAC-VSOG, and they send them out into these neutral territories to try to hunt and kill the American MAC-VSOG operators. Because of that, the MAC-VSOG casualty rate goes up, and at one point it was actually reported as being a 100% casualty rate. If you were in MAC-VSOG during this era, there was a 100% likelihood that you were going to get injured or killed in the line of duty. A Purple Heart to these guys was just a rite of passage. So MAC-VSOG starts taking more casualties. They realize they're being hunted. Then they start doing countermeasures to prevent from being caught. They're having helicopters go in and pretend to drop off a bunch of operators when they're actually not doing it, basically spamming them. That way, when they actually do go behind the line, the enemy's not going to know whether that was a fake drop-off or a real drop-off. So that's what's happening. There's like this shadow war going on in the neutral territories of Cambodia and Laos. And this...
Wait, Purple Heart. You earned that from being injured in battle and making it home, right? Or do you get the Purple Heart? No. Yeah. But let me know if I'm, because if you pass at war, you don't get a Purple Heart. But if you make it back home, you get a Purple Heart, right? Let me know if I'm tripping, y'all.
Drop off. So that's what's happening. There's like this shadow war going on in the neutral territories of Cambodia and Laos, and this is what's happening when Roy shows up. So 2 weeks into being there, Roy goes out on a mission, and one of the guys, if he's with, ends up getting shot up, and they have to get this guy medevaced. But they're still being attacked, so they can't go out in the open so a helicopter can land. So the helicopter has to drop what's called a Maguire rig. It's basically just a rope that these guys are going to hook onto, and they're going to pull them straight up out of the canopy of the jungle and fly off with them dangling underneath the helicopter like some badass Pinocchio. Now, usually when you do this, like you can see in this picture, you're stacked on top of one another on the same nylon rope. But for some reason on this day, they dropped 2 nylon ropes. Roy hooked the other guy that's injured up to one, and he hooked himself up to the other. And Roy probably didn't even realize that there was 2 ropes. He just saw a bunch of nylon rope everywhere. He hooked both of them up, and they were going to take off. So they get pulled up out of the canopy. They take off headed towards camp, but because they're each on a different rope, the ropes end up getting crossed, and the nylon ropes start rubbing together. And when nylon rubs up against nylon, it melts because it's plastic. So these ropes are going to end up snapping, and Roy and his buddy are both going to fall to their death unless they can land and get this figured out. And they can't land because they're still being shot at. Now, luckily for Roy and the other guy, the belly man in that helicopter was another one of Roy's friends, a sergeant by the name of Leroy Wright. And he noticed what was going on, and he ties himself off to a third rope and lowers himself out of the helicopter in between the other two nylon ropes, allowing his body weight to untangle the ropes as he lowered himself down, saving all three of them.
Bruh, what the? While bullets are flying at you, yo, what the fuck? It's another world, bro. War is another world. It's almost like you have to put on a different brain when you decide you're going to get deployed into actual war and you're going into war. Like you pick up one of your brains, be like, oh, no, that's not the brain I need. I need this brain today. Bro, they're taking on fire, which I was going to ask y'all because y'all did let me know that it's a war crime to hurt an injured soldier while he's being taken off for medical purposes, right? So are they shooting at the actual bodies that's dangling on the ropes, or are they shooting at the helicopter? Because I think the helicopter is fair game, right? Or is that just airborne, or is that just the pilot rules, the jet fighter rules? Like you don't, if you see a plane going down, leave them alone. Or let me know. God, whole nother, bro. Bro, that's different, bro.
To untangle the ropes as he lowered himself down, saving all three of them.
That's crazy, bruh.
2 days after that, Roy wakes up in his cot. Time to go get breakfast. He heads off towards the chow hall. He's making his way there, and everything just starts scrambling. There's radio transmissions coming in saying it's a Daniel Boone tactical emergency. Daniel Boone is the name of the operation in Cambodia. You're not supposed to be saying that over the radio, period, which means that shit has really hit the fan somewhere. Everybody around him starts scrambling. Helicopters start going out, and helicopters start coming back in, all shot up with injured men on them. And Roy goes up to one of these helicopters trying to figure out what's going on. And the door gunner in this helicopter falls out, and it's a 19-year-old kid that Roy remembered they just celebrated his birthday like a week ago, and this kid falls into Roy's arms and dies on the spot. Roy asks the rest of the helicopter crew what's going on, what's happening, and they tell him that there's a team out there that's getting overrun by hundreds of NVA. So Roy continues to ask him, what team? Who's out there? Did you pick them up? Are they here now? What's going on? And they go, no, we couldn't get close enough to pick these guys up. They were so overrun and we were taking too much fire from the helicopters. We don't know who it was, but it was the big black dude that saved you the other day. And Roy immediately knows they're talking about Leroy, and his entire team is still out there. So Roy asks them, are you going back out there? And they said, yeah, we're going to go back out there, but we're not going to be able to land. The only thing we're going to be able to do is drop ammunition out of the helicopter above them so they have ammunition to keep fighting. And to Roy Benavidez, it sounds an awful lot like somebody needs help. And with that, he runs over, grabs his medical bag, jumps in the helicopter, and they take off. A couple minutes into the flight there, Roy realizes that in his hurry to run and grab his aid bag so that he could help, he made a mistake. A really, really big mistake. He forgot his gun.
God damn it!
He is now in a helicopter flying into combat with no gun, no food, no water, no grenades. He literally has an 8-inch recon knife and his aid bag, and that is it. Despite that, Roy is still determined to help these guys. So they get there, they drop the ammunition out of the side of the helicopter on top of these guys, and then they fly off. And Roy says, get me as close as you can and land this helicopter so I can jump out. And they get him like 150 yards away from where this team is injured and pinned down. And Roy jumps out of the helicopter and starts running towards them. He makes it 10 steps, gets shot, drops him. He got shot in the leg. He tells himself that he tripped and landed on a thorn bush, and he's not actually shot, but he knows he's shot. He keeps running towards them, and he makes it another 50 yards, and he gets shot again. This time, it's a glancing blow to his helmet. He doesn't know that yet. Maybe he got shot in the head. Maybe he didn't. Maybe it was shrapnel. He has no idea. He'll figure it out later if he makes it. So he just keeps running to the team, and he finally ends up making it to him. So he makes it to where the team is pinned down. They're all spread out, way too far out. They're not in a defensive position. They're running out of ammunition. Every single person there is shot, blown up.
Oh.
Everybody is in horrible shape. So Roy gets to
What
work. He
the
picks up an
fuck?
AK-47 off a dead NVA soldier as he runs to each individual team member, giving them morphine, whatever medical aid he can, and then dragging them over to this anthill, this big pile of dirt, to get them in this defensive position where they're actually semi-close together and they can start fighting back. Roy ends up making it to the guy with the radio, and he's like, this is Tango Mike, I've still got men on the ground. I need to get these guys medevaced. I have green smoke grenades. I'll pop them so you know where we're at. While the helicopters are on their way, Roy keeps going and getting more guys and dragging them back to the anthill, giving himself and everybody else morphine. The helicopters finally show up. The door gunners lay down suppressing fire, and Roy starts loading up the guys at the anthill onto the helicopter, but he still has more men out towards the bush line that he hasn't been able to make it to yet. So he gets all the guys on the helicopter, and then he tells the door gunner, hey, we still have men over there. Cover me, and Roy takes off running next to the helicopter as the helicopter is gliding next to him, and him and the door gunner are returning fire into the wood line, trying to make it to the other men. So Roy and the helicopter make it to the last guy that Roy knows of, and it's not Leroy. So he asks this guy, where's Leroy at? And that guy points him towards the wood line and says he got hit back there, and he's got a bunch of confidential, classified information on him. So Roy decides that he's gonna go get it. He takes off running towards where this guy pointed him out in the wood line, but the helicopter can't follow because it can't get that close to the trees. So the helicopter door gunner continues to lay suppressing fire while Roy runs into the tree line and finds Leroy's body. He gets all the classified intel off Leroy's body, and then he begins dragging Leroy's corpse towards the helicopter because he at least wants to bring his friend's body home. And then he gets shot in the back. As we all know, it's always darkest right before the dawn, but as we also all know, sometimes it's darkest right before it gets even fucking darker. After being shot, Roy turns around, realizing he's not going to be able to bring his friend's body back with him, and starts running towards the helicopter. And then he sees the helicopter pilot get shot through the window as the helicopter spins out of control and crashes. Roy makes it to the crash site, and everybody there that survived is pretty...
All right, y'all. All right. Roy leaves base, heads out, no gun, gets dropped off. 50 yards into this, he gets shot in the leg. Another 50 to 100, he gets grazed in the head. It hit his helmet, though. We don't know if he's shot in the head or not. With a bullet in his leg, he doping up with the morphine so that the pain don't hit him. He's doping everybody else up with the morphine. He's dragging everybody to this ant pile of dirt to protect them from oncoming fire and to load them on to the helicopter. He's asking for his homie Leroy. They tell him where Leroy is. He goes to Leroy. Leroy's passed. As he's dragging him back to the helicopter, he gets hit in the back. He realized, I can't do it. He drops Leroy, starts to head back to the helicopter, and sees the helicopter pilot get popped, and now the helicopter's in a frenzy. All of this while shot in the leg, grazed in the head, and now shot in the back. And this is before any of the knife action has came into play. Because I know we're about to get into the knife action, and you're telling me all of this has happened before that. My people, this shit is crazy. So this is where the Rambo action is about to start. I take it. This is incredible so far. And it's a little fella. Okay, let's go.
Spins out of control and crashes. Roy makes it to the crash site, and everybody there that survived is pretty much ready to call it a day. They've accepted the fact that they're about to die, and Roy...
So there's... Right, because the helicopter had wounded soldiers on it. Oh, shit. But apparently they survived. The ones who did survive the crash are just like, bro, just fuck it. Fuck it, dog. Just leave us. It's a wrap.
It is pretty much ready to call it a day. They've accepted the fact that they're about to die, and Roy hasn't. He starts dragging everybody, getting them away from the burning helicopter and getting them into another defensive position so that they can fight back. He's going and getting AK-47s off of dead NVA soldiers, getting these guys guns. He has guys that can't even see. They're missing eyes, and he's just telling them, shoot that way. Under Roy's leadership, they start fighting back, and Roy starts calling in airstrikes, F-111s, F-4 Phantoms, gunships, anything and everything they have.
So the soldiers that he just pulled onto the helicopter, he is now dragging back off the helicopter to the defensive dirt mound. I'm going to just say it's the same dirt mound. It may not be, but I'm going to say it is. He's going and grab rifles off of all the sea soldiers, bringing them back to the ones that are alive. And it's some who ain't even got eyeballs. And he's saying, look, dog, here goes the trigger. I'm pointing you in this direction. Don't fucking move. Just fire until you're empty. You ain't no way. How do you even prep for this in real life? This is crazy.
Strikes, F-111s, F-4 Phantoms, gunships, anything and everything they have, and they just start bombing this tree line with all they've got. And they do it over and over, but the enemy soldiers just keep coming and coming. There's literally hundreds of them. And this goes on for hours. It's too hot for them to get a helicopter in there to load people up, and every time they bomb the tree line, more enemy soldiers run out of it towards Roy and his crew. And it gets to the point that they're literally using the dead bodies of soldiers as sandbags to stop bullets. Roy and the men on the ground don't realize it at this point in time, but the crews up in the gunships that are mowing down the forests that the enemies are coming from are starting to mow down so much vegetation that they're starting to see straight lines, which don't occur naturally in nature. These are bunkers with fortified machine gun positions. The MACV-SOG team didn't just stumble across an entire battalion of men. They walked right into an entire NVA base inside of Cambodia. Eventually, the air crews come to the realization that
So that's why it's so much fire being taken on. Because they're thinking that they're just taking on a few hundred soldiers when really you taking on the actual base. That's what he just said, right?
Positions. The MACV-SOG team didn't just stumble across an entire battalion of men. They walked right into an entire NVA base inside of Cambodia.
Wow.
Eventually, the air crews come to the realization that with this base there's got to be at least 1,000 men, an entire battalion there, and there's a road where they can bus in even more men for reinforcements. They're not going to be able to keep this up and get Roy and everybody else to be alive and handle this the right way. So the only thing that they can do is to have a carpet bomb of that forest, and at the exact same moment that those bombs start dropping, they're going to send in the helicopters to try to pick up Roy and everybody else. So a group of A-37 Super Tweets bomb the tree line as a Huey comes down, and Roy starts helping to load these men into the helicopter. Some of them have lost so much blood they can't even pick themselves up. And while this is happening, the North Vietnamese soldiers rush them. They're coming straight towards the helicopter. They're firing. Roy's trying to load the men on while firing back. The door gunner's returning fire, and one of them ends up making it to Roy, and for some reason, whether he was out of ammo or whether he was trying to take an American alive, he hits Roy in the back of the head with the buttstock of his rifle. Roy falls down, and then he swings it again at Roy's face, dislocating his jaw. Roy, somehow still conscious, gets up, starts trying to wrestle this guy to the ground. He lost his gun. All he has is his recon knife, and this guy's got his rifle with a bayonet on it. And the enemy soldier goes to lunge at Roy with the bayonet, ends up cutting Roy's arm, and then Roy lunges at him, misses. The enemy soldier lunges back. He ends up stabbing Roy in the stomach with the bayonet, and Roy ends up getting to him with the recon knife, stabbing.
This is the first mention of knife work, and the knife work is being put in on Roy. Roy ain't put in no knife work yet. Where is this story going? My boy shot in the leg, shot in the head, shot in the back, gun butted in the head, stabbed in the arm, stabbed in the stomach. That's 7 injuries so far. And he's still... no. Gun butt in the face. Dislocated jaw, cracked jaw, whatever he said. And he's still ticking. And no knife work has been put in on behalf of Roy yet. Get the fuck out of here.
Roy's arm, and then Roy lunges at him, misses. The enemy soldier lunges back. He ends up stabbing Roy in the stomach with the bayonet, and Roy ends up getting to him with the recon knife, stabbing him in the chest and killing him.
Okay.
Roy pulls out the bayonet, can't get his recon knife out of this guy's chest, and he's now holding his intestines in his stomach with one hand. At this point, Roy's right next to the helicopter, and he's looking right at it. He should get in the helicopter, but he turns around away from the helicopter, and there's 2 Americans still out there returning fire that are able to fight they're just not able to walk, and Roy runs towards them. Roy gets there, picks up the one that can't walk entirely, and starts helping to drag him towards the helicopter, and the other guy can't crawl, but he can't walk, so he literally starts walking on his knees using an AK-47 like it's a crutch.
I'm taking that all the way back, y'all. I'm taking that. Shouts out to Forrest Gump. I'm taking that all the way back.
They're returning fire that are able to fight. They're just not able to walk, and Roy runs towards them. Roy gets there, picks up the one that can't walk entirely, and starts
while holding his intestines in his own stomach. Let's go.
Helping to drag him towards the helicopter, and the other guy can't crawl, but he can't walk, so he literally starts walking on his knees using an AK-47 like it's a crutch. They get to the helicopter. Roy helps load them in the helicopter, grabs the AK-47 that the guy was using as a crutch,
while holding his own intestines in. We're not letting that go.
Roy helps load them in the helicopter, grabs the AK-47 that the guy was using.
Y'all can't see it, but I'm literally holding my stomach. I'm sorry, y'all. I really like good stories, and I really like detail. My ass is sitting here holding my stomach like I'm holding in my intestine. Watching this video. This shit is crazy.
Helicopter. Roy helps load them in the helicopter, grabs the AK-47 that the guy was using as a crutch, turns around again and starts shooting at NVA soldiers that are charging towards the helicopter as the injured men behind him literally grab Roy and drag him into the helicopter as they take off. As it becomes clear to absolutely everyone that Roy Benavidez did not just bring a knife to a gunfight, the communists brought an army to a Roy Benavidez fight and still couldn't win. After saving all the surviving members of the original MACV-SOG team and the first helicopter crew, through 6 hours of combat, Roy has sustained over 37 different life-threatening injuries, multiple gunshot wounds, over 20 shrapnel wounds.
I was way off. My ass said 8. Now I think I added 1. This motherfucker said 37. 30. We can't handle 2 paper cuts at the same time, y'all. Let alone a broken bone. Y'all see what we go through when we break a bone? We just shut down life like, I can't do that. Nope, can't do that. This man having 37 of them holes at the same time and still ticking, all while holding his fucking guts in. Wired different, y'all. Completely wired different.
First helicopter crew. Through 6 hours of combat, Roy has sustained over 37 different life-threatening injuries, multiple gunshot wounds, over 20 shrapnel wounds. He has been bayoneted and he has been clubbed. And after being dragged into the helicopter, he finally loses consciousness.
Just a flesh wound.
Was that Men in Tights? Is that? I could be wrong. But I still don't know how you pull that out your ass, Nick. Ain't Dead Yet, Chapter 5. Let's fucking go.
His next memory is being literally waist deep inside of a body bag as an American medic is zipping it up. His eyes are caked with blood and he can't open them. He can't talk to the medic because his jaw is dislocated and he's lost so much blood that he can't move. And from the medic's perspective, he doesn't even realize that Roy's an American because he's Hispanic, he's got the same skin tone as a North Vietnamese, and Roy's body is literally laying on top of 3 dead NVA soldiers that in Roy's fog of morphine and adrenaline, he loaded into the helicopter because he didn't want to leave anybody behind. Roy can literally feel the teeth on the zipper closing as it gets closer and closer to his head, and once the zipper reaches his neck, somebody stops the medic and says, "Hold on, that's Benavidez," and he instructs the medic to double check and make sure that Roy is actually dead. And
Bruh, like dead ass, like that actually happened in real life. Like, I couldn't imagine I'm in a body bag laying on top of dead soldiers that I saved their corpse from being left out because I want these guys to have a proper burial, their families to know what happened to them. And I'm so drained that I'm just like, man, fuck it. I'm going to just go with them too. And you actually envision you being zipped and about to be just thrown to the side in the body bag. And somebody actually comes in that moment and says, hold on, that's the homie. Double check to make sure he's actually passed, because Buddy really don't die like that. He don't, like, we thought he died 12 times, but he's still alive. So just make sure. Like, imagine if that person on the way to whatever area he was walking to said, fuck, I need to go take a piss real quick. Or, fuck, I dropped something, and in the second that it took him to drop and pick the thing up, the zip up happened and the body bag get thrown to the side. That means something had to align so perfectly for that man at that moment to be in that area and say, hold on, not him. Double check that. Bro, that's you gotta believe in some kind of higher power for that to happen. I don't even want to call that a coincidence, but that you have to believe in something for that to happen.
Zipper reaches his neck. Somebody stops the medic and says, hold on, that's Benavidez.
Like,
and he
come on.
instructs the medic to double check and make sure that Roy is actually dead. And the medic argues with him, and Roy's buddy says, I don't care, double check. And the medic zips down the body bag a little bit and puts his hand on Roy's chest and leans forward to listen and see if he can hear breathing. And at this moment, Roy takes what he describes as the best shot he's ever made in his entire life. He spits directly in that medic's face.
Get in that hawk.
And with that, they get Roy out of the
Nick, I'll body slam you, Nick. Nick, I'll body slam you, bruh. No, you did not pull Hawk Tua into this. This motherfucker's a menace. This motherfucker's a menace.
He spits directly in that medic's face.
Get in that hawk.
And with that, they get Roy out of the body bag, they get him in the aid station, and they start trying to do everything they can for him, but they're almost positive that he's not going to make it. After his chain of command figured out everything that had happened and that Roy was pretty much the only reason that the 8 other men that survived made it out of there alive, immediately got him signed up to receive the Distinguished Service Cross. The only reason they didn't try to get him the Medal of Honor on the spot was because they didn't think Roy was going to survive, and they wanted to get him an award that they could give him in the field so that he could receive it before he passed away. But
Wow.
Roy Benavidez had other plans. He doesn't pass away. Instead, he recovers. And not only does he recover, he yet again refuses to get med boarded out of the Army into a medical retirement and continues to serve an additional 10 years in the United States Army. And during that time, they try to get him awarded the Medal of Honor because if anybody deserves it, it's this guy, right? But for some reason or another, it always ends up getting rejected, and it gets rejected again and again and over. They just keep rejecting his Medal of Honor. But there's nothing that Roy or anybody else could do. For some reason or another, the committee in charge of awarding the Medal of Honor simply did not want to give Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez the award that he had earned. So he did the only thing he could do. He just...
Is it because he was Mexican? Don't tell me that, bro. All right, let's just see. Let me see what happened before I jump. Let me just...
Roy or anybody else could do. For some reason or another, the committee in charge of awarding the Medal of Honor simply did not want to give Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez the award that he had earned. So he did the only thing he could do. He just kept on keeping on. So he went on, served throughout the military until 1976 before finally retiring as Master Sergeant Benavidez, the recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross. As Roy retires, there was another press push about how incredible he was, wondering why he didn't earn the Medal of Honor, and this ends up connecting him with one of the men that he had saved that Roy actually thought had died. And this man gets a hold of Roy almost 12 years after the fact, and he tells Roy that he's going to write up everything that he witnessed and send it into this committee again. And yet again, even despite all this new information, the committee in charge of awarding the Medal of Honor rejected it again. And then they realized what they were doing wrong. They were telling the whole truth. They were saying that Roy hopped in a helicopter, flew into Cambodia, and helped save a bunch of MACV SOG members. And as far as the US government's concerned at this point in time, up until like the mid-80s, MACV SOG, A, doesn't exist, and B, if it did, it definitely would not be operating in a neutral territory like Laos or Cambodia because that was against the rules.
Oh!
I can neither confirm nor deny details of any operation without the Secretary's approval.
Oh!
So the politicians...
I forget the movie, but great scene. Oh my God, it's making sense now. I was about to be very angry, and I even pulled the Mexican card. God, okay, it's making sense. Even though I still don't agree, it's making sense because in reality, Oh my God. In fucking reality, these events were not even supposed to take place because we weren't supposed to be in that area. Oh no, we weren't supposed to be there. Especially not doing this incredible shit. Okay. Even though I don't agree, it's making sense.
Details of any operation without the Secretary's approval.
So the politicians and the bureaucrats in charge realize that if they give Roy the Medal of Honor for saving MACV-SOG members in Cambodia, which wasn't supposed to be happening, there could be political backlash, and they're not going to metaphorically stick their necks on the line just to give Roy what he deserves, despite the fact that Roy put his entire life on the line for them. So bearing this in mind, they redo all the paperwork, they jump through all the hoops to try to get Roy the Medal of Honor again, and this time, rather than saying that Roy's courageous actions occurred in Cambodia, they simply said that they happened to the west of Lock-In Airfield, which was where Roy was stationed. They just didn't bother to say how far west. And once you know it, it gets approved. Roy Benavidez receives the Medal of Honor in 1981 from President Ronald Reagan, 15 years after the fact. After getting what he had earned, he finally gets to go home with his wife and kids and enjoy his retirement for all of like a year and a half. Because on a random day in 1983, he receives a letter in
I'm born. So you telling me this shit happening? What's about to happen happens when I'm born. Let me see if I was born yet. Let me see if he says what month and day it was.
For all of like a year and a half. Because on a random day in 1983, he receives a letter in the mail from the US government informing him that he would not continue to receive his veterans disability benefits from his injuries that he sustained during the war. And Roy's not having it. He goes straight to the media, starts putting out press releases and giving interviews talking about how ridiculous this is and putting political pressure right back on the politicians. And wouldn't you know it, a couple weeks later, the US government comes out with a statement of like, oh hey, we're sorry that we're doing this. We haven't been handling it appropriately. We're going to continue to do it, but we're going to do it in a more humane way for everybody involved. And while I can't prove this, I'm willing to guarantee that Roy Benavidez got the notification of like, oh, sorry you got that letter. Obviously this doesn't apply to such a high profile person that's got enough leverage to be a pain in our ass. Here's your benefits, but we're going to go ahead and fuck everybody else. And Roy wasn't going to allow it. He came out and said that if they can try to do this to him, he can't imagine what they're going to try to do to everybody else. So he keeps fighting for not only himself, but for the other 350,000 veterans that were getting their benefits cut, right? Because they need help too, and Roy's gonna help them. So he keeps pushing and putting more pressure on the US government. Basically just comes out and says, hey, the same Ronald Reagan administration that gave me my Medal of Honor is now telling me and a bunch of other veterans that we're not good enough for the benefits that we earned. And with that, he finally gets to testify in front of the House Senate committee in charge of this entire operation, and they end up shutting the entire thing down, preserving the benefits for 350,000 veterans. And with that, Roy Benavidez could finally go home, enjoy his retirement, and live happily ever after. So, in conclusion, when somebody needs help, you help them. And for the love of God, the fact that somebody renamed Fort Bragg Fort Liberty and not Fort Benavidez instead is borderline criminal. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang out.
More.
Oh, hey, real quick. If you guys wanted more, there's a book called Legend by Eric Blem, all about Roy Benavidez. The author spent like 3.5 years researching for it, and he actually helped me make this video. So if you guys wanted to check it out, it's over on Amazon, and I'm sure it's on his website if you wanted to Google it too. I'll have it all linked down below. Thanks for watching.
After that PlayStation comment, I'm taking these back.
Come on. That's not funny. I want those.
No.
They locked me in our staging area and started unloading, started identifying the bodies. They found out I loaded 3 dead enemy soldiers in that helicopter. I didn't want to leave anybody behind. My mission was to recover the classified material, so if anybody had it, he was on the helicopter. They left the 3 enemy soldiers on the side, and because I sort of look Oriental, they thought I was one of them, so they let me lay right next to them. And they were putting us in body bags. And I remember that my feet being lifted, and I was inserted into the body.
Oh my God, he's telling a story about the body bag.
And I remember that my feet being lifted, and I was inserting to the body bag, and I could hear that zipper coming up, and I thought, oh my God, no, no. And I couldn't talk because my jaws were locked, and I could hear that zipper coming up, and one of my buddies was doing the Mexican head dance, and he was yelling at the doctor, that's Roy Benavidez. The doctor said, sorry, there's nothing I can do for him. I'll find out later. Jerry Cottenham made that doctor at least to feel my heartbeat. When I felt that hand on my chest, I made the luckiest shot I ever made in my life. I spit in the doctor's face. You know, there's a saying among us veterans, for those that had fought for it, life has a special flavor. The protected will never know. You have never lived till you almost died. And it is us veterans that pray for peace most of all, especially the wounded, because we have to suffer the wounds of war. I'm asked hundreds of times, would you do it over again? In my 25 years in the military, I feel like I've been overpaid for the service to my country. There'll never be enough paper to print the money, nor enough gold in Fort Knox for me to have to keep from doing what I did. I'm proud to be an American, and I'm even prouder that I've earned the privilege to wear the Green Beret. I live by the motto of duty, honor, country. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.
Oh my God. Incredible story. Incredible story. So even after all of that, the government tried to do away with their retirement fund. And even though he won his payment back, he said, nah, something ain't right. Something ain't right. This shit ain't right. Yeah, I got mine's back, but I know how this government play. I know they'll just give me, just me, my shit back, and then won't give it to any other vets. And he said it was, what, 350,000 of them, he said? And because of his campaign that he put on, the government dropped whatever the fuck they was doing. Probably trying to just take their money, dish them out as payments, or use it for more war, even though it's plenty of money for everybody, for the vets to keep their retirement and to fund war. He fought for them. Government drops it. Everybody keeps their benefits. You fucking lying to me. That's another medal, y'all. That's a whole nother medal. But of course the government isn't going to give, of course the military not going to give him a medal for going against the government. But that deserves a whole nother medal. I believe there should be another body of people who issue out fucking medals to vets who fight a whole, like that's a whole nother war that he fought. That was a war he fought. And just like he fought in Vietnam, in Cambodia, the same way he fought that war, he came home and fought a whole nother political war that by himself. I mean, I really don't know if it was actually by himself, but it's presented like he fought it by himself. And he won that too. Yeah, man. Oh my God, this is just giving me so many ideas in my head, man. But I'm not gonna get into all of that. That was incredible, y'all. I'm happy. Oh my God, this shit makes me want to jump right into old treachery. But I'm already an hour and 17 in, y'all, and I ain't even talked that much. Oh my God. So the Rambo shit, the Rambo shit was him in the woods going absolutely ape shit. My boy, he put in some knife work, so much knife work he couldn't even get the knife out the man's chest. But he put in more gun work than knife work, I believe. Incredible story. Let me stop. Incredible story. Nick, Great storytelling, bro. Kudos. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I got more coming. Trust me, y'all. I'm out. Peace. Wow.